Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive.
Yeah.
This time, we're going to be tackling all this fascinating research on shadowing that you all sent in.
Yeah.
It's this language learning technique that seems to be exploding in popularity right now.
Mm-hmm.
And for good reason, I think.
Yeah, it seems like it.
People are claiming some pretty amazing results with it,
Right.
like speaking more naturally like a native speaker,
Yeah.
and even getting a better grasp of English grammar just by doing this.
Yeah.
So what's the deal with shadowing? What's so special about it?
Well, what I find interesting about shadowing is that it really taps into this natural human tendency that we all have,
Okay.
which is mimicking.
Yeah.
We learn so much from just imitating others
Absolutely.
from when we're kids.
Yeah.
And shadowing kind of takes advantage of that to help
Yeah.
you absorb English almost effortlessly.
So you're saying it's about more than just pronunciation?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
Like, think about it. When you speak your native language,
Yeah.
you don't translate every word in your head first, right?
Yeah, definitely not.
You just speak.
Right.
And shadowing aims to get you to that same point with English.
Oh, okay.
So you can think in English
Gotcha.
and just speak fluently without overthinking it.
So for someone who's totally new to this, like never even heard of it,
Mm-hmm.
what exactly is shadowing?
So imagine you're like right behind a native speaker, like their shadow.
Oh.
And as they're speaking, maybe it's in a podcast or a movie or something,
Mm-hmm.
you're right there with them, repeating everything they say
Wow.
out loud. And you're trying to match their speed, their tone, everything.
Okay, so like real-time mimicking.
Exactly.
So it's like, okay, hear it,
Yep.
and I try to say it right away.
Yeah, as close as you can.
Okay, is this something a lot of language learners actually do?
It is. It's getting really popular. In
Oh.
fact, I was reading about this polyglot, someone who speaks multiple languages.
Yeah.
And he was using shadowing to learn a new language in just a few months. And he was really dedicated. Like, he set a timer for 30 minutes each day
Oh, wow.
and would just shadow news broadcasts
Oh, wow.
in his target language. And after just a few weeks, he could understand and speak
Wow. That's impressive.
at a basic level. Pretty amazing, right?
Yeah, so you mentioned matching their tone, too, not just the words.
Right.
What does that actually involve?
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
In linguistics, we call that intonation.
Okay.
And it's basically the rise and fall of your voice as you speak.
Oh, okay.
Like how your voice goes up at the end of a question or
Right.
how you emphasize certain words
Yeah.
to give them more meaning.
Okay, I see.
So it's like the music of the language.
Like the music of the language.
Exactly.
Okay,
And shadowing helps you internalize those subtle nuances.
gotcha.
So you don't just sound accurate, you actually sound natural
Oh, okay.
and fluent.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So just to kind of recap,
Yeah.
shadowing is basically listening and then repeating, but with this focus on the intonation.
Right.
And it seems simple enough, but I imagine there's a knack to doing it.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Effectively, right.
There is, yeah. And, most experts agree it's kind of a 3-step process.
Okay.
So the first step is choosing your material. And you don't want to jump into something super complex right away.
Okay.
You want something that's clear, engaging, maybe a podcast with a host you like,
Yeah.
or a scene from a movie you enjoy.
So something you'd actually want to listen to anyway.
Exactly.
That makes sense. So what's the next step?
All right, so step 2 is the shadowing part.
Okay.
The actual repetition. So you listen carefully to a short segment of whatever you've chosen.
Right.
And then you pause it and try to repeat it as accurately as possible.
Okay.
Matching not just the words, but the speaker's pace, rhythm, intonation, everything.
So I'm like an actor trying to embody the character.
Exactly.
Okay.
You
Okay.
got it.
So I'm listening, pausing, and mimicking, trying to get into character. What's step 3?
Step 3 is super important. It's reviewing and adjusting.
Oh, okay.
So you listen back to the original audio.
Yeah.
And you compare it to your shadowing attempt.
Gotcha.
And you notice any differences in your pronunciation, intonation, pacing.
Okay.
And then you try shadowing that same segment again.
Mm-hmm.
And you just focus on those areas where you can improve.
So it sounds like shadowing involves a lot of active listening
Definitely.
and self-correction.
For sure.
So like, why is it so effective? Why does this actually work?
That's what we're going to dive into next.
Okay.
It's not just about sounding more like a native speaker.
Right.
The benefits go way beyond that.
Okay.
We're talking improvements to your fluency, your comprehension, even your memory.
Wow. Okay, now you've got me intrigued. Let's unpack those benefits.
Let's do it.
All right, so we've established shadowing is about way more than just mimicking pronunciation.
Yeah.
It's like a much deeper thing.
For sure.
You're saying it can actually help me become a more fluent,
Absolutely.
well-rounded English speaker.
It's like a multivitamin for your English skills.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
So let's start with fluency, because I feel like that's what a lot of
So-
people are after.
Definitely a big one.
Right.
Yeah.
So how does shadowing actually improve fluency?
Well, when you're shadowing, you're basically forcing yourself to process and produce English
Okay.
in real time.
Yeah.
So it's like training your brain to think in English,
Right.
which is essential if you want to speak naturally,
Okay.
without those awkward pauses and stuff.
So thinking in English
Yeah.
is kind of the key to unlocking fluency.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, but how exactly does shadowing do that?
So when you shadow, you're basically bypassing that need to translate everything in your head.
Oh, okay.
So instead of thinking, okay, what's the word for apple in English?
Right.
You're just hearing apple
Okay.
and repeating apple.
Yeah.
So you're directly absorbing those patterns
Yeah.
and the rhythms of the language.
Okay.
And this helps you develop what we call in linguistics automaticity.
Automaticity, what is that?
It's basically the ability to speak without having to consciously think
Oh, okay.
about every single word
Right, right.
and every grammar rule.
So it's like taking the training wheels off my brain and just letting it flow.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
And with fluency also comes confidence.
Oh, yeah.
When you can express yourself easily,
Right.
you're less likely to hesitate.
Yeah.
You're less likely to stumble over your words.
Yeah, sure.
And that can make a big difference in how other people perceive your English.
Yeah. Confidence is key.
Definitely.
But you also mentioned comprehension and memory.
Mm-hmm.
How does shadowing affect those areas?
Well, think about it this way. When you're shadowing, you're constantly exposing yourself
Yeah.
to authentic spoken English.
Okay.
You're hearing all those different accents, the different speeds, different ways people use intonation.
Right.
And it trains your ear to decode all those different ways of speaking.
So it's like I'm building up my listening muscle.
Exactly.
The more I expose myself to those different ways of speaking,
Yeah,
the better I'll understand them.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that improved comprehension can really have a ripple effect
Oh, okay.
on other areas of your language learning.
Right.
So, for example, when you understand more of what you hear,
Yeah.
you're more likely to pick up new vocabulary.
Right.
You're more likely to pick up new grammar structures.
Yeah, it's actually, now that you mention it, I have noticed
Mm-hmm.
that since I started shadowing,
Yeah,
I have been using slightly more complex grammar in my speech,
right.
and I don't even really realize I'm doing it. It just kind of comes out.
That's great. Yeah, that's a really common experience
Oh.
for people who shadow.
Okay.
Because you're mimicking native speakers, you're internalizing those grammar rules in a way that's so much more engaging than like
Right.
boring grammar drills.
Like learning grammar by osmosis almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and what about memory? How does shadowing help me remember
Mhm.
these new words and phrases?
So shadowing engages your brain in a multisensory way.
Okay.
You're listening, you're speaking,
Right.
you're often reading along with a transcript if you're using one.
Okay, yeah.
And that active engagement really helps strengthen those neural pathways
Gotcha.
that lead to long-term memory.
So it's like carving those words and phrases into my brain
Yeah, you got it.
through repetition and active processing.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's really cool.
Yeah,
Sounds like there's a lot of really good stuff that comes from shadowing.
there is. It's a really powerful technique.
So before we all rush out and start shadowing everything we hear,
Right.
are there any tips for making it
Oh, yeah,
as effective as possible?
definitely. Yeah.
Okay, let's hear them.
So choosing the right material is key.
Mm-hmm.
You want something you find engaging,
Right.
but not too overwhelming.
So not too easy, not too hard.
Yeah.
Like Goldilocks.
Exactly. Yeah. Think Goldilocks.
Okay.
So maybe not like Shakespearean sonnets for beginners.
Right. Yeah, that's probably a bad place to start.
Yeah. Podcasts, interviews.
Okay.
Even those educational YouTube videos that everybody loves.
Right.
Those are all great options.
A lot of good options out there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, and once I found some good material, what's next?
So start small. Don't try to shadow a whole podcast episode
Right.
or a whole movie scene all at once.
Okay.
Break it down into manageable chunks.
Okay.
Like a sentence, a phrase, even just a few words at a time.
So this is letting me focus on the accuracy,
Exactly.
both in terms of the pronunciation and the intonation.
Yep,
It's like mastering the micro
Yeah.
before I try to tackle the macro.
you got it.
Okay. And speaking of accuracy,
Yeah.
it's okay to make mistakes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Like, I don't have to be perfect right away.
No, not at all. The goal is progress, not perfection.
Okay, that's good to hear.
Yeah, just keep practicing, keep adjusting, and you'll get there.
And don't forget about those transcripts.
Right, yeah.
Like, those can be really helpful,
They're super helpful.
especially with pronunciation.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a roadmap for my shadowing journey.
I love that. That's a great analogy.
And if I'm really serious about improving, it's okay to ask for feedback.
Oh, yeah,
From like a language partner or a teacher.
definitely.
Right.
Yeah, they can give you some really valuable insight.
That's like gold dust in language learning.
It is. It's so valuable.
So we've got our material.
Mm-hmm.
We're starting small.
Yep,
We're embracing our imperfections.
for sure.
We're using transcripts. We're seeking feedback. What else?
Consistency is key.
Okay.
Even just 15, 30 minutes of shadowing a day
Okay.
can make a huge difference over time.
It's like any skill, the more you practice, the better you get.
Exactly.
So to recap, choose your material wisely.
Yeah.
Start small, embrace imperfection,
Mm-hmm.
use transcripts, seek feedback, and practice consistently.
You got it.
Got it.
Nailed it.
Okay, but how do I actually fit shadowing into my
Right.
overall English study routine?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And that leads perfectly into our next discussion.
Okay.
Because shadowing isn't just this standalone technique.
Right.
It can actually enhance every aspect of your language learning,
Okay.
from listening comprehension to vocabulary acquisition.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Tell me more about that.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so we covered a lot about how to shadow, but like,
Mhm.
how does it fit in with everything else I'm doing
Right.
to learn English?
Yeah, so it's a great complement to other learning methods.
Okay.
You know, like you mentioned, working on your listening comprehension.
Yeah, definitely a weak spot for me.
Well, shadowing can really help with that.
Okay.
Because when you're actively listening and repeating, you're training your ear to pick up on all those little subtleties of spoken English, like the pronunciation, the intonation, even just the way grammar is used in natural speech.
So it's just like I'm fine-tuning my ears to the frequency of English.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
And it's not just passive listening either. You're actively engaging with the language,
Right.
which makes it way more effective for improving your comprehension.
So it's not just about understanding English,
Mhm.
it's also about being able to speak it more naturally.
Right.
So how does shadowing help with that?
When you shadow regularly, you're essentially building this library of authentic English expressions in your mind.
Okay.
You start to internalize those natural speech patterns and rhythms.
Right.
And then when you're speaking in a real conversation, those phrases just come to you more easily without having to think too hard.
It's like I'm absorbing the language at a deeper level,
Yeah.
almost like muscle memory for my mouth.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a
Oh.
great way to put it.
Okay, and we can't forget about vocabulary.
Right.
Shadowing exposes you to a ton of new words and phrases
Mhm.
in context.
Yeah. And that's so much better than just memorizing lists from a textbook.
Yeah, it's true. Like, seeing how those words are actually used in real conversations
Yeah.
really helps me understand their nuances.
It's all about that real world application.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you hear words used naturally, you're more likely to remember them and be able to use them yourself.
So it's not just about recognizing the word.
Mm-hmm.
It's about being able to actually, like,
Yeah,
pull it out of my mental word bank and use it.
exactly. You got it.
Okay, cool. And believe it or not, shadowing can even help with grammar.
It can.
Okay, now, it's not a replacement for studying grammar rules,
Right.
but it can reinforce what you've learned in a more organic way.
Definitely.
How so?
Well, by repeatedly hearing and mimicking grammatically correct sentences, you're internalizing those patterns without even realizing it.
Okay.
You know, you might notice yourself using the past perfect tense correctly more often after shadowing a historical documentary.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. It's a very subtle but powerful way to reinforce your grammar.
It's like my brain is picking up on the rules through osmosis.
Exactly.
So shadowing is like this all-in-one tool
It really is.
that touches on so many different aspects of language learning.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm sold. I'm ready to start.
Awesome.
But I need some inspiration.
Okay.
What kind of material is actually best for shadowing?
So the good news is you have tons of options.
Okay.
Podcasts are a great place to start.
Okay.
You know, you can find podcasts on just about any topic imaginable,
Right.
and they usually feature pretty natural conversational English.
I do love a good podcast. What else?
If you're more visually inclined, films and TV series are another fantastic option.
Okay.
Choose something with clear dialogue, maybe set in everyday situations, so you can learn those useful colloquial expressions.
Ooh. So I can finally justify all that binge watching.
There you go.
Okay, perfect. And don't forget those subtitles.
Subtitles, yeah, they can be super helpful, especially when you're first starting out.
Like training wheels for my ears.
Exactly.
Okay, and what about something shorter, like
Mhm.
if I don't have time for a whole movie or a whole podcast episode?
Right, well, YouTube is a treasure trove of shadowing material.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You can find educational videos, interviews, vlogs. There's something for everyone.
Right.
And again, the beauty of YouTube is the variety.
Yeah.
You can find content that truly interests you no matter what your passion is.
So I can learn English and geek out on my hobbies at the same time.
There you go.
Win-win.
Exactly.
What about for us bookworms?
So for bookworms, audiobooks are a great option, especially if you choose a book that you're already familiar with in your native language.
Oh,
That way you can focus more on the language and less on trying to follow the plot.
it's like shadowing on easy mode.
Exactly.
And last but not least, TED Talks.
TED Talks, yes.
Yeah.
Those are fantastic.
Good, right?
Known for their clear, engaging English.
Yeah.
And they cover such a wide range of interesting topics.
But basically, if it's in English and I enjoy it,
Mm-hmm.
it's fair game for shadowing. I love that. Okay, but with all this practice, how do I know if it's actually working?
That's where self-awareness and feedback come in.
Okay.
So one great way to track your progress is to record yourself shadowing.
Oh, okay.
Then listen back and compare your version to the original.
Right.
You'll be able to hear those improvements in your pronunciation, your intonation, your fluency over time.
So it's like a before and after for my English.
Exactly.
And I guess getting feedback from a language partner or a teacher can also be helpful.
Definitely. Yeah, they can provide some really valuable insights and help you fine-tune those areas where you might still be struggling.
Awesome. So it's all about consistent practice, self-evaluation, and seeking feedback.
You got it.
Got it. I'm feeling really inspired to level up my English game with all this shadowing.
That's awesome. I'm so glad.
Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the world of shadowing.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you've gained some valuable insights and practical tips
Yeah,
to take your English to the next level.
absolutely.
Happy shadowing, everyone.
Okay.